Hello everyone and welcome back to our first official LinkedIn Live of the year at Social Tree Global. Now, we are starting this year off with a bang because we have an amazing guest joining us today. He is the head of social media at JP Morgan Payments, Mr. Robin Lynch. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live.
Thanks very much, James.
We're also joined by Max, who is of course business partner at Social Tree and sometimes friend. Welcome, Max.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, James. You know, I've been wheeled out for another episode, but really excited for this one. Obviously, our first live back, 2023, and really exciting one. And I think, for a lot of people out there really passionate about LinkedIn, the thing is we're still early, guys. Like, it's still early on the journey of LinkedIn, and there's a massive opportunity for brands out there who can really harness the power of LinkedIn in 2023 to gain competitive advantage. And, there's nothing more powerful out there than your staff. And in this live, we're going to be breaking down how you can run an effective employee advocacy campaign, learning by, some of the best brains in the business.
Yeah, so the plan today, just some hygiene. This is a LinkedIn Live, so you can ask any question within reason in the event, okay? So there's a no holds barred question, so you can just drop a question in the chat. Don't be scared, anything commentary. Really want to, use this opportunity to talk to Robin about anything to do around employee advocacy and social selling. It's going to be a really interesting session. So let's kind of crack into, the first question of the day. So Robin, at Social Tree, we have this idea of decentralized social media, which is essentially the idea that social media and the increasing demands which content is bringing on social media teams is leading us towards a new process, a new system as to how we actually think about content. And that idea is almost outsourcing, or at least decentralizing areas of the content production to some of your talent within your team, because your talent and your team are the boots on the ground. They know what's going on. They understand the troubles, the pain points your customers have. So what's your kind of high level thoughts around that kind of key concept? And do you use an iteration of that when it comes to building your strategy for your program?
Yeah, I mean, decentralized content is about freedom. Let them be free. Let's talk gonzo social. Yeah. Let's talk about setting, you talked about the most powerful people in your organization. Let's get them out there to be creative, to really create that spark that lights the fire. So for me, there are three trends that I see in employee advocacy right now. And these are the ones that are hot. These are genuinely trends that are changing the way we do things around here. Mm-hmm. It's not just, is that a train I should be on or something that's going by. So firstly, definitely decentralized content. That's a long way of let your advocates be free, let them create gonzo content. Mm-hmm. Secondly, then the creator community, and specifically LinkedIn's very successful attempts to foster creativity on the platform. And finally, certainly financial services anyway, but I think this goes beyond the connected economy. So the lines between different industries are being blurred, and this is being created by ecosystem models, by platform business models, by marketplaces. And that means that as marketers, as salespeople, anybody communicating with your audience, the old rules are gone. You can't rely on the old stopgaps. You can't rely on the old shortcuts or heuristics. Your communication needs to talk to a much wider audience, people in CX and tech and ops across the whole space. And that means you need to be simpler, you need to be broad, you need to be more compelling. Mm-hmm. So that all brings it back to, say, decentralized content. Now, what does that mean and why is it important to you? Essentially, it means training your advocates, your colleagues, your social sellers to create gonzo content. That can be sketches, can be thoughts, it can be videos, it can be photographs. And it should be weird and wonderful. It should be curious, distinctive, unique. This is why people come to social platforms. Mm-hmm. They want to be diverted, they want to be entertained, they want to have some fun. Now, all this is screamingly obvious. And I'm sure there are many people here today who will say, yes, we're authentic. Yes, we're social first. But I know that what can happen, and if you haven't fallen into this trap, then kudos to you. You're a better social marketer than me. Is that we all start from a point that we know it's people, it's process and technology. And we jump straight into process and technology. We said, what's the business case I need to make? What's the tech I need to make? What are the prompts I need to create? How do I optimize? How do I scale? How do I measure? And we forget about the people. And then what happens is that we end up in a place where our content is too polished. It feels like someone's just receiving an email at work instead of a social post. So what we're all about in this idea of decentralizing content is to build your program, whether employee advocacy or social around or whatever, around the ability for that creativity, for those sparks, that individualness.
Yes, there's so much to unpack there, and I think you're spot on. It's personalization at scale is kind of the key word. And I think, Max, you made a really good analogy, or was it me? Maybe you stole it from me. I don't know. It was one of us. We're one of the same these days. But the idea around thinking about your social page, as your LinkedIn page, particularly as a show, and actually, I suppose, bringing that idea down to your advocates,
Yeah, I think, everyone would agree we're experiencing webinar fatigue. Like, people are just sick to death of webinars. Like, how many more webinars can someone attend? Like, I don't think there's many people out there at the moment like, yay, another webinar. We're experiencing webinar fatigue. And I think the power of social media now, especially LinkedIn, is the idea of brand TV. That we can create our own TV shows, have our own podcasts like we're doing today, having a chat, engaging the audience. And again, we are live, guys. So if you do, feel free to ask questions as we go through, and we'd love to hear your thoughts of decentralized content as well. And I think we're moving away from that from a monologue to a dialogue. And I think the power of brand TV is really exciting. And the concept of decentralized social media, which can be really scary. We've moved from a centralized model to empowering our staff and having to let go. And for finance brands in particular, it can be quite unnerving for a lot of brands out there. So
it's a huge leap of faith. Yeah. But everything is based on trust. And I would say, what we're talking about today, this is perennial best practice for social marketing. But I feel that the reason that if you're not on this now, you need to be thinking about it, is over the past 18 months, we've seen from more pioneers, more risk takers, but also this concept of LinkedIn rewarding people who are being more creative and changing that platform. Those coming together means that this is much more important, I'd say, than it was 18 months, 2 years ago.
And I think to your point around LinkedIn, I know for a fact LinkedIn are investing millions of pounds into their creators. They have the Creator Accelerator program, which I was really fortunately part of. They are leaning into this new idea of the creator economy. And I think brands are going to have to almost be able to participate in that by creating the infrastructure and sandpit for their advocates to actually create content. So kind of zooming in a little bit into the program you're running, Robin, could you kind of break down, you mentioned people, process, technology, it's a really nice kind of freeway system to approach it, but could you kind of give an overview of the program, kind of at a high level, like how it works, and then we could break down some of the, I suppose, the key pillars and trends you're looking, which define success within that?
Absolutely. So I work in JP Morgan Payments. So it's a line of business looking at everything from cash management to e-commerce, pay in to pay out. And we have a very extensive program, maybe 3-4 years old, built around, I think, various levels, but essentially maybe 200 very, very frequent advocates who are talking about what we're doing. They're active themselves, they're active as individuals. I guess that's what I'm talking. We don't want them to be mouthpieces. And then we have around maybe 2,000 people around that who are kind of active on the platform, maybe not necessarily posting them all the time themselves. And then we have a subset of around 150 people who are social sellers. So essentially we're setting that group up specifically to support with our sales activity. And that's where we've seen the biggest growth over the past year. So I think our advocacy group has matured. You don't want it to be so big it's unmanageable, but the social selling is where we're seeing, every month another 10, 20 people coming into the program. So that's real growth.
Yeah. So social selling, could you define slightly the difference between, from your perspective, employee advocacy versus social selling? And secondly, why is social selling, in your opinion, so much more exciting in terms of as a hook for your program?
I think social selling, I think of as making a connection.
Yeah.
And advocacy as joining the conversation.
That's nice.
So social selling, I mean, our sales people, they would say sales is about making a connection. So It goes to using social data, using your social profile, having one-to-one conversations or small conversations, and also using LinkedIn to use video content, as you were saying, Max, to broadcast what you're doing. When we think of advocacy, you don't start an advocacy program. Your people want to be on, well, in our case, LinkedIn anyway, that's where our playground is. But people want to be on. They want to talk about what they're proud about, what they're proud of, what they're excited about. They want to be more successful in the hiring market. They want to have their own, boost their own career prospects. And so our role for the advocates is essentially to get them set up. It's training and it's support. And then from then to take it from there. Though I guess those are the difference between the two.
Nice. And we've got some questions coming actually.
Right.
Yeah, so just we can take a few questions as we kind of go through. So we've got a question here from Anastasia Hatchich. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. And the question is, how do you organize the process of measuring KPIs that aren't visible externally on personal profiles of employee advocates, impressions reached? So a question about KPIs. And again, for the audience out there, feel free to ask your questions. We want to hear from you guys as we go through. But yeah, question about KPIs there, Robin.
Sure. I'm going to answer that in two parts. So first I'm going to talk about invisible metrics. And then I'm going to talk about more, I think, just the classic ways of measurement. So what I would say is absolutely core to successful advocacy program is this idea that all of us are on social for the fact that we're talking to, we're being spoken to, we're getting engaged, we're getting comments, we're getting hits of dopamine, maybe we're getting a bit more endorphin over longer periods, hopefully. But everything is about, this is a place where we want to be, and then we keep coming back. So we always think about, it's that unseen impact that you want your advocates to be receiving, connections, they want to be followed, they want to be shared, maybe they're having conversations that might lead to sales, maybe there's just someone they hadn't seen in a while, maybe they've got an introduction. So all those pieces. And the way that I think about tactically, how do you encourage this is make sure that your advocates are all well versed on analytics. I find a lot of people don't even know they exist, so that's something we're very strong on. Make sure that, like, if you see these people in person or on a call, that you're chatting to them and say, what was the feedback, or did you get any response from those kind of things? Encourage them to make comments so that they're getting comments in response as well. So it's all these pieces so that they're getting more and more excited because they are part of a conversation and they don't feel they're just kind of churning it out. This has to be fun, it has to be enjoyable. Yeah. If I go back then to metrics, I think certainly at the pointy end, we're looking to have maybe intent metrics. So that could be marketing qualified leads, or it could be a sales conversation that started on Sales Navigator, or it could be insights that were created to maybe build a new audience or connect with the new people that wouldn't have happened without that social element. If I think we think of the social selling as in that kind of intent and consideration phase. Coming out a bit, like we think about then the back up the funnel, we think about consideration. We talked about the human plus the brand, and this idea that if you are getting content from your advertising and your advocacy, they're coming together. Your advocates carry some credibility because of your brand, and your brand is slightly softened because as people, if I'm targeting Max, you're getting confirmation or content from those, and it's all coming in the round, and it just becomes more three-dimensional and more real. So we measure that impact then is if we bring in advocates, we bring in social sellers to support campaign activity, how are they boosting then those engagement metrics? And then I think we come back out purely on a kind of an advocate level. We've spoken a lot before around just using the publicly available LinkedIn data through an API or whatever tool you want to use in order to measure, I would say probably followership over time, followership after significant events or campaigns. Yeah. Definitely, generally, engagements, and maybe you're comparing as opposed to just kind of like a mass volume. But those are and the web metrics then as well. We're very much about keeping them on the platform, but if there is a web journey with the web metrics. So I think that, to go backwards, the way I went was that the awareness piece is that kind of high level, the volume and the different comparison. consideration is around how the impact it has in a campaign, and then those social selling at the other end.
There's I think your point around social selling as well is there's also tangible a stack of metrics you can use as sales teams, and I think it is really important to measure anything you're doing on social, and at the same time have consideration that there's a whole dark pool of metrics which cannot be easily extracted but are really important for any kind of sales conversation. As an example, if you're constantly at front of mind on LinkedIn around your audience, around key points, you may not be able to tangibly measure that, but the output of looking at someone's profile before you go to a meeting on LinkedIn, teaching good practice around events, they're really big. And I think there's a whole unspoken power of reputation which really transcends just basic clickbait stats around if you are doing advocacy correct and you are teaching your advocates and you are empowering them to create content and you are front and the center of the conversation, then it's going to do a world of good for any sales conversation, and it can't be explicitly measured. But I think if anyone is questioning the value of reputation, then they're wrong side of history.
Yeah, and just a few more comments coming in. One by Colin Birchall. I enjoy the trust given to me by my company to put posts out on their behalf. I think you guys are right on trend. Thanks for that, Colin. If I don't know what my customer's interested in as a business development manager and what content I think clients would be interested in seeing. So, yeah, I think it is quite empowering, isn't it, to give staff the ability to get active on social. And I think for a lot of the younger demographic coming up as well, like Gen Z's coming into an organisation, they want to be empowered and they want to be actually influencers, and a lot of them crave for that online attention. I think that can definitely be very empowering. But just another question coming through here from Jeanette Fianda. Is there any form of moderation that happens, or is it a huge leap of faith? Because, going back to that idea of decentralization, there is a leap of faith that happens, but is there any moderation for you guys, or you pretty much let people run with it?
We let them run with it. Hi, Jeanette. Thanks for the question. We don't. There's no moderation. It's all training and support, and I think we're actually kind of almost pulling back a little bit as well in terms of we're just giving more and more kind of support and guidance and showing best practice. And letting people run with that. There is, we get support from our parent brand. We have the guidelines that we follow. We're all expected to follow that and use our good judgment. And I think that really is a fantastic environment to be a social marketer in.
And you have to trust. And this is the thing I don't understand. People at work JP Morgan Payments. They're smart. Very, very intelligent professionals. And we've been doing advocacy programs for 6 years, and I can literally count on one hand, there's just a couple of times that are probably hundreds of thousands of people posting where there's been some kind of red flag, because most people are just using the common sense. And I really think we need to learn to just trust people, obviously have the infrastructure in hand. And I think one of the things which I think there was a question surrounding around compliance, and how do you kind of get compliance on board? How do you educate compliance, and how do you, I suppose, make them less stressed about this? Because that is a massive problem, and I think it does distill into really bad advocacy when you see businesses that just essentially tell their advocates to just share copy and pasted posts, and it just looks like spam. So how do you educate compliance? Is there a process where they're on board with stuff? How do you kind of get them on side to create the environment where people can be trusted to kind of post what they want in many ways?
Yeah, thinking about how we run at JP Morgan, but also in previous jobs that I've had, the scenario that you describe, hundreds of thousands of posts and no incident, that's my living experience. Yeah. So, we have a lot of people talking, we give them clear guidelines about do's and don'ts, they go out and they do that. I'm looking for something to touch here, so I don't tempt fate. But
that is wood, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Isn't
good.
that wood?
I'm done.
Yeah, it's fine.
But the way I recommend is essentially that you have to create a scenario where everything goes well. So you do that with a certain pilot amount of people. over a period of time, and then you expand and you expand, and you earn trust by giving trust, essentially. I would say as well, we've had scenarios, we've had other channels that we've used, we've had, maybe different formats that we've used, let's say groups, for example, where we just felt that we'd run those pilots and they haven't worked. So we're not on groups and we're not using those, and that's not something that's in our plan for the foreseeable future. So I think if you have a series of what are the channels, what are the formats, what's the content you want to do, but essentially build out those pilots, show everything's gone well, and keep going until you get to, like I say, we're kind of running now 3 or 4 years, and I benefit from the work that was done before I arrived by the wider team as well.
Yeah, nice. And just some more comments coming through. So we've got Lucy Cole here. How do you gamify an employee advocacy program without losing the meaning behind the program? I want colleagues to be enthused to post, but not posting for the wrong reasons. And I think we were talking just actually before the live, talking about the emotional connection you can have with your staff and the dopamine hits you can get from it. And it can be, gamification is part of it, but it's also incentivizing them through the results that they're getting. And so it'd be good to hear your thoughts on, elaborate on that one, Robin.
So thinking about gamification, this is something that we've tried a little bit and I would do more of, but essentially is to play into the competitive spirits of certainly most salespeople and most senior people. I think we do a lot of sharing really great posts, and that people say, oh, okay, well, that person's doing it, so I quite like to be on that, and then they get in touch. And that's probably one of our biggest, so we have a daily email that goes out, and that's one of our biggest recruiting tools. And people just go, oh, I love this. I think as well, so let's talk a little bit about emotion. So we as B2B marketers, we tend to default to features, tech specs, benefits, and so on when marketing, almost as if like our audience, when they're people, we're thinking of them as a not as humans, but like as a faceless organization. And I read a blog from Merkel recently, which talked a little bit about we almost assume that on their commute into office or when they go away from the kitchen table and open up their laptop, they've suddenly turned into something that they're not. The people the same as us, they have hopes, they have anxieties, they've forgotten their breakfast, they've got annoying stakeholders. We need to when we're marketing to them, to create an emotional experience. So, and we don't think of emotion doesn't have to be, anxiety or fear or hope or happiness. It can be curiosity, it can be inspiration, it can be motivation. And the same is true for when we're trying to encourage our advocates. They're coming to us because they're interested, and we want to keep them interested. So one way, as Max mentioned, is the idea of making sure that they're getting they're seeing the engagement on their platform. But in the other way is to create your training program around emotion. Think about primacy and recency. Start the session off with a really powerful anecdote or a story about how how successful this could be, or the impact you can have, or the emotions you create, and then finish on that as well. And I think if you're following those B2B tactics that I fall into sometimes myself, definitely, but if you're doing it right and if you're using the emotion, then you can create that kind of buzz. So there's a little bit of kind of competition, and there's a little bit of connection in there. And
I think there is a real what's in it for me, because ultimately your LinkedIn profile is your new CV. So I know it sounds obviously a bit weird, but I always tell program leaders to say to individuals, do this program obviously for the business, but do it for yourself actually, because you're going to get really nice profile, you're going to get educated, you're going to have help with your CV, your about section, you're going to be promoted by your brand. I think that it's funny when I do training sessions, sometimes people go, oh, I don't want my profile to be a corporate mouthpiece. I don't want that. Or the other extreme is, well, what if I just talk about things that aren't related to work? And that's where the magic of this kind of balance comes in, between your professional brand encompasses where you work for sure, but it also encompasses your professional interests, which circumnavigate your whole professional life. Yeah. And LinkedIn is about harnessing those things together and creating content which leans into your unique experiences whilst being a sponsor and advocate of your brand. It's basically like being a footballer in many ways.
Leads on to a nice question in the chat here about content actually. Would you have some examples of what good content looks like? E.g., when you talk about brand TV, does this webinar fit your definition of the weird and wonderful? Well, we'd love to hear what you guys think. Does this brand TV, does this live work for you guys? Is it more engaging than a webinar? Does this conversation work for you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We believe it does.
Yeah.
But what do you
Could be
think?
wrong.
But in terms of good content, like, at the end of the game, this is a content marketing game. It's all about the content. It's all about the engagement. At JP Morgan, what are you seeing some of the best examples of content? What's driving the engagement for you guys? What's some of the best forms of content there?
Let's go back to that idea of gonzo assets that we talked about, and this is where we're seeing engagement. So I think we have imagine text posts where you're not really committing yourself to any point of view. So maybe you're sharing a link, or maybe you're agreeing with somebody, or so on. Where we're seeing real engagement is where people kind of put together, this is my point of view. I'm educated, I'm experienced, I'm not afraid to show it. I don't need a video or a carousel. This is just 3 or 4 paragraphs of what I think is interesting. It doesn't have to be the classic, like if we were writing it, if we were marketers, with a nice strong hook above the more button or anything like that. It just has to be, authentic posts. And I think we were working with one of our senior influencers, and he saw something he liked and posted about it. And I got twice as many engagements as the previous content. And that really made me think about just the power of that simplicity text. And again, it's something you can get caught into because you want to create, nice animations and other assets as well. I definitely think the idea of we're seeing kind of semi-polished self-recorded interviews. Mm-hmm. So, it doesn't have to be completely out of the gutter, but it shouldn't, I think, veer into something that's always kind of produced by the brand as well. So I do feel that there's a lot of, we do this quite frequently at events. We'll record people and we'll kind of put on some information, or we'll get to record themselves. So those definitely text posts and this idea like of UGC videos. And we see so much success as well with essentially photography classes for your advocates. So basic things that we would know ourselves around lighting and around framing and things like that, and just kind of passing on that information. And I've seen such an increase in amazing photograph posts from colleagues, and that always goes well because that's what you're here for. That's what you're there for.
And that's really interesting because we've been trying to unlock that puzzle ourselves, because the big picture idea is personalization at scale. And for those of you who are on the live now, we're actually demoing and building a tool which we think may at least go some ways of solving this. And essentially the tool is going to empower individuals to be able to create unique pieces of content very, very quickly. Because traditionally the problem has always been, well, I want to create an audiogram, I want to create a video post, I want to create a text post, but I don't have the time and expertise to do that. So we're creating this tool. It's called Brain Dump. And essentially, we're looking for a few of you on the live to join us as beta testers. So over the next few months, we're going to be working with a few people. There's no cost involved. We just want people to start trying it out and using it. We've got a quick video, which is going to explain how the tool works. It's about 1 minute long. And if you wanted to join us on a beta trial, then I'm going to drop my Calendly into the link, and one of the team will book a time, and I can take you through the tool. And over the next 3 months, we'll hopefully explore how we can help scale your content. So here's a quick video of what the tool does.
Brain Dump, people-powered content. Turn good ideas into brilliant content assets. With Brain Dump, you can easily turn you and your team's ideas into assets and achieve personalization at scale. With Brain Dump, you can reduce the friction between ideas and content with our easy video and audio creator tools. Scale your organization's content with Group AI-assisted aggregator. Turn ideas into assets with our agency-powered dashboard service. Brain Dump makes it easy to create and scale people-focused content across organizations. Simply upload your audio or video and let our team of talented agency creatives and AI assistants make trending assets. Brain Dump can help scale employee advocacy, thought leadership, content marketing. Our content is powered by people, and with a little help from AI, we can empower your people to turn their ideas into trending content assets. It's time to fuel your content with the passion of your people. Upload your Brain Dump and see where your idea takes you next.
So is then put my Calendly in. If you want to have a play around the next few months, book some time with me. We can have a chat. We'll go back to the questions now, and then go from there.
Yeah, so there's been some good debate in the comments actually, and we've had a question from Joe Lloyd about what tactics have you found most successful for persuading less enthusiastic advocates to engage on your program? And then we've had some good comments around there, like Travis Coleman saying, you need to sell the benefits to them as an individual, never try to push people. David Perry saying, focusing on the folks that have a slight interest to be more active, definitely a way at it. And I think we've talked a little bit about this as we've gone through. But yeah, any further comments about trying to get the less enthusiastic people on the program, because they're always a difficult one. And
I agree with them. I agree with Travis. I think I have people who I could see that there will be. You're almost like a talent scout in this job, and there are people who I see, have that talent in them, but I think you don't want to push them off. So you can often kind of leave them like in the hopper for a while, and then work with some of the colleagues. And again, it's just that community vibe, a little bit of one-upmanship, a little bit of competitive spirit, and you'll find those people will come in. I do find the kind of route to entry for a lot of people who are skeptical about the advocacy or the selling. If you tell them that this will help them hire people, they will knock down your door in a shot. The idea, I can't find talent, or I need to make sure that I'm bringing in diverse talent, that is such a powerful thing for people. So I often use that. I mean, you have the benefits of the firm, you have the benefits of the individual, but I often find if you can get someone thinking about, well, I'm almost like a public figure in the recruitment market, so how do I make myself a bit more on it?
It's still surprising to me how many, people still don't see the value in it. But when you actually look at the world that we're in, like look at, some of the biggest, personalities out there in business, like Elon Musk, when he does a tweet or he talks on social media, that's his communication style. Like he's literally moving some of the biggest companies in the world through the power of Twitter. Some positive, some negative, so it's but the communication style has definitely changed, and we are in, a digital first era. Another question that's come through, and I think it was impossible to not touch on this topic as we go through the live, but ChatGPT has come up. And Lionel, is ChatGPT going to help create better content? How are you and your team including it into your content creation process? So I think it's, obviously a massive topic out there. And I think, a lot of people out there, we're still playing around. It's still new. It's only really been in the public domain in January, but be good to hear, I guess, initial thoughts around AI, ChatGPT.
We're very focused on seeing where this could take, and I think there's been like these quite small leaps even in the first few weeks. This idea like of how can you make it sound like yourself, but in the language or even in in your own voice. I do feel that where I can deliver impact for the organization is that human to human conversation.
Yeah.
And we are some of the things we talked about today, all the tactics that we use in our training and the support are for people to be, even the format, some of the format I've described are not particularly revolutionary, but it's just the idea of the language that you use can be a bit silly, or it can spark an emotion or something. That's where we are focused. I do feel that there will be, certainly in the short term, applications for kind of functional content, I guess. But for us on a social platform, we're here to have a conversation, and that's what the focus is.
Yeah. I think it's all about, and we've talked about being human and that human connection. And when we talk about the best content that's being produced, it's things like photos, it's things like videos. And, we can even look at other social channels as well, like TikTok. Like you're not going to get ChatGPT to start creating viral TikToks. Not yet, maybe in the future, I don't know. But if you look at actual content, what's really moving the needle is videos, it's photos. And if you look at things like YouTube, it's actually, like you said, the less polished stuff that really resonates and hits people. Like, my kids, I've got like 5 and a 4-year-old, and they're watching, YouTube videos made on a handheld camera, getting like millions of views. Like I saw a documentary of KSI the other day, who's got like millions of views on their video, and it's not polished. It's not like, made in Hollywood. It's not made by Disney. It's authentic. It's human. And for me personally, with ChatGPT, like I find it hard to engage with it. Like I can't engage with a robot. I can only engage with a human. And it's that real connection. And I think that you can't actually fake being real. Like people have a real radar up about whether someone is fake and someone is real. And I think ChatGPT is a great tool, but it's never going to replace humans.
I wouldn't. Sorry, James. I do find sometimes that in B2B marketing, we have been churning out robotic content for quite a few years.
Yeah.
We don't really need help from technology. And I think
it's been very robotic for years, hasn't it? I mean, we've been doing that.
It's easy to slide into that trap. Like if you think about the way that we communicate to each other, we use very rigid, very formulaic or structured language in emails and presentations. And that's okay because, we don't want to be ambiguous. We don't want to come across as passive aggressive. Somebody probably has to read that email, whereas nobody has to read my LinkedIn post. So we're very focused on avoiding that kind of slide into jargon language, and to be unique essentially. And I know that AI is not always the thing, and they will progressive and it will seem more natural. But
I think there is a definite I would push back slightly in saying that I think that if you're involved in marketing and you're not taking this seriously, I think that's a mistake as well. Because whilst, yes, I agree that, of course, we value human-to-human interaction, what is a huge part of all of our jobs is, let's be honest, the low-end, repetitive, automated tasks when you're doing a big program that you're going to have to do. And one example is, I think AI, where it's going to be really useful, is actually scaling creativity. I think that you're going to be, as anyone involved in content, the cost of production in content production is going to go down, and the factor and scale you need to achieve is going to go up by 100-fold. So an example of this is going to be, there's going to be technology, it exists now, we've built it, which is going to be able to essentially turn 1 minute conversation or 5 minute conversation into 50 content posts. And that post is going to be branded and it's going to be scheduled. And also, the speed in which you create content and distribute it is going to be able to, you need to get faster. For example, in financial services, in anything to do with banking, anything to do where the news flow is fast, the content demands placed on teams is going to become much harder. And I think AI is going to be a really important tool in helping to scale it. So I think, I think that this is something which I'm personally taking very seriously. I think that if you are someone that is, churning out robotic content, if you are sitting there making generic white paper posts, be worried. I think be very worried. No, seriously, be worried for your job. Honestly, if you're not bringing that creativity, that human spark to your content, you're going to be in trouble in the future. You really are.
There's some comments in here just saying, love the comment. In B2B, we have been churning out robotic content for years. We don't need any help. And
it's a very good point.
Absolutely true. And we'd love to hear your thoughts about ChatGPT. Feel free in the chat to drop your comments, what you think about it. And that's again goes back to the reason why I'm so passionate about brand TV and stuff like this, because this is live, like you're talking to humans, so at least you think you are.
No, we are.
He might be a robot,
but deep fake.
He's pretty much a real person.
Here, I exist.
He does exist, but and that's why I like this live format, and I think it goes some way into helping that humanity.
I think AI and automation will scale human creativity. And I think when you think about AI as a tool to scale productivity and creativity, it's incredibly useful, but you have to have that human-powered content at the precipice. And I think that's kind of including remarks. So I want to generalize across the panel. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's roughly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, nice. And just a few more comments coming here. Ketner Mystery. You need to treat social media like a networking event where they engage in conversations. They should be reading the content they are sharing first off. And I think that's something that a lot of people are definitely guilty of doing, is not being conversational in their posts. I think LinkedIn is very much a big, at the moment, a lot of verbal diarrhea actually out there.
Well, and another thing we were talking about, Robin, as well, is what's a really pet peeve on LinkedIn Live is brands that go live, but they don't actually go live. They fake their live. They have a pre-recorded video.
Yeah.
That just screams at B2B, B2B robot. It's like we're going to do live, but it's typical B2B content marketing for. But we're not going to go live. We're just going to do a video. We're just going to play the video, and people are going to think that we're live, and really we're not live. And when people ask questions, we're not going to answer anyone's questions. It's like the whole point of LinkedIn Live is to go through the live and interact. And that's most LinkedIn Lives are just pre-recorded talking head videos, and I think that's just completely disingenuous to the whole point of social selling in LinkedIn.
Yeah, definitely. And just to spin off on some of the on that last question as well, what we find is that in terms of LinkedIn is definitely guilty of this one-sided conversation.
Yeah.
Where it's me on my soapbox rather than having a conversation. So we put a lot of effort into our training around this idea of creating an environment for yourself where you will want to come back to. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, you can put a lot of work into creating some amazing posts, some great, amazing content. They may or may not have the impact that you want. And that can feel maybe feel a little bit hollow. That can feel like it's not really a return on your investment. Whereas we think a lot about simple, practical things that you can do to make your newsfeed more interesting, to get the topics that you want to be, using very, very basic things that will have like a real bang for buck impact. And that means that our advocates, at the very least, they have somewhere fun that they can go to that's going to get interested and entertained. If they then dive off the springboard and start posting content from there, that's great. And when they do that, they're more likely to carry through the best practices from their community.
Yeah.
And that's why we say as well, LinkedIn loves conversation. So comment, get involved with that conversation, and don't feel that you need to muse by yourself.
Yeah. And just, a few more comments coming through. So Alicia Russell, B2B marketers are the ultimate control freaks. They definitely are. They just can't let go. And that echoes what we were talking about at the beginning about the decentralized content production, which we think people need to move to. People need to let go. Things are just moving too fast to be centralized. And
but why do people think that B2B, why do we have this problem with B2B? I'm keen to hear people in the comments. Do you think it's... have we been conditioned to be afraid of? I mean, you look at like other B2C, you see the experimentation going on and you see the level of creativity and freedom. Whereas in the B2B, I feel like we're all in this straitjacket. So it's really interesting. You made a point about the human content as well, and focusing on that human powered thing. I feel like, I don't know whether culturally, are you creating a much more open, creative culture in the business, which is kind of feeding itself to take more risk? And I suppose, does it take someone like you to really be the vanguard of that? So it's okay, just create content, it's going to be okay type thing.
I would say that I'm advocating for creating emotional experiences.
Yeah.
Within my team, there are tons of people who are also on that journey and are very receptive to that information. I think maybe community wide, we could be guilty of some caution and conservative.
Yeah.
And I do think there are things we could borrow from our mad friends at BBC.
Yeah, we've got a comment here, Donna Jade. So talking about keeping it real, I would love to hear about an example where employee advocacy went wrong and how you learned from it. So, you learn from your mistakes. And I've got one that I can share with you, is that time and time I see advocacy programs going wrong when you're relying on centralized advocacy programs. I'm not going to mention any names out there, but, when you've got advocates who are just told to share content, just cut and paste content from the corporate, from the corporate page, it never works. That's why I've seen programs fail, because it just becomes spam. And I think there's a need to actually flip it on the head and have your actual staff become the creators rather than relying on decentralized medium. That's what we're trying to do at Brain Dump. That's our mission. That's why we've developed the tool, is actually to try and reverse that process.
It completely echo that. Most brands, they use the platform and then people just spam a link and 100 people see the link, and people don't realize your network is probably seeing not just your post, but 4 or 5 people sharing the exact same post, the exact same copy, and it is the new email spam. Basically, it's a new email spam. It's a new spam. That for us has been the critical failure of employee advocacy. Is just, I think you were speaking about the people and processes. It's using technology without anything else.
Yeah, there was not so much something that's gone wrong, but I think it was an interesting experience for me. Was maybe about 18 months ago, we produced some content that was picked up by international media very, very widely, and our community really went for it. And there was an amazing selection of, original, funny, putting about some great stuff. And I have to say, I felt quite discombobulated. I was like, whoa, they're kind of out there and doing this. It goes back to the control freak piece.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a learning experience to me, that I kind of just had to make sure that I stepped back and didn't try and barge in and trying to give any marketing advice. Just kind of let them out there and let them do it.
So just touching that more. So you had a piece from the program, press picked up on it, and it started getting loads of organic traction from.
Yeah, it was kind of like 48-hour news cycle, big story.
Oh, wow.
And just our influencers and our advocates were, it was a fun topic, and they're really into it, and they went wild. And so, like, this wasn't a disaster, but it was, the interesting experience for me was that I kind of felt like completely superfluous to proceedings. I guess I give them the tools, but it was that kind of had to. The reason I felt a little bit uncomfortable was because I wasn't involved. They're doing it all by themselves.
So they were like commenting.
Yeah,
like,
they
hey,
were just out there. Yeah,
and
I found that like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
But that's what I set out to do.
Yeah.
But then when it actually happens,
and they were all fine. There was no issue.
No, everything was fine. Yeah.
So they were just replying. I mean, they were just doing, thank you for getting in touch with me. And
I think just sharing the content, getting involved in the topic. There was an element of kind of virtual reality into, like, so they were kind of trying this out themselves.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, well, it leads on to a good question here about what advice to the panel have you for persuading leaders to broaden their content scope of employee advocacy programs? And you touched upon virtuality, and I've been trying to get a few of my, my advocates to get some avatars and get into VR, but that's just one bit. But yeah, what are your thoughts about persuading leaders to, go out of their comfort zone a bit and try new things? How can you, what are your thoughts around that one?
I think one tactic that we encourage people to do is when they're posting about anything, and I always say you need to have a mix. You need to have, like, I guess a good media mix, to use a marketing term. And I talk about, like, there needs to be some element of personal in there. You can share our own content, you can share other content, but you need to be kind of talking about yourself.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be super intimate. The obvious starting point is going to events and so on, but they need to be sharing information that's kind of pertinent themselves, milestones, etc., just reflections. And I always say is, if that feels super uncomfortable for you, which it does, then write it down, just put it in the text editor and read it out loud. And if it feels like something you would say in conversation, then go for it. Then you're there. That's golden. If it doesn't, then kind of go back and edit a little bit. And I found that's been really successful in helping people get over this hurdle of, how am I going to post something that's not just,
What about, you mentioned training, how to take photographs. I think one of the big things people ask this question is, have your leaders actually had any training on LinkedIn? Have they had any actual dedicated support? Because a lot of times when you're leading a division, you're the boss. If you're running with someone, she's managing hundreds of people. But she might, in the back of her mind, go, I don't actually really know what to do on LinkedIn. And you mentioned, perhaps that's also the thing. Say, hey, let's train you. Let's spend some time. How you take photos. It's how you do basic video. Does that help? Do you think?
It's essentially a training program.
Yeah.
I mean, we do content marketing,
and
that's over here, and the advocacy is all about training, and a lot of it is one-to-one.
Yeah.
One reason I love it is because you get to chat to so many people, and you can have a quick phone call over just 15 minutes.
Yeah.
How to do so that, but it's all about training and education, and I find as well the more that you push that, the more you pull back, and the more you put them out.
Yeah.
Although that can be something that there might be reluctance in the first bit, it actually produces better content. We've had a few events recently where we've just kind of given them license to go and post, and it's been amazing.
There's also a lot of things people don't realise in advocacy is cross-pollination of content. So people forget that if you have 100 people, there's probably 100 different types of conversations you can have within the network, and they can all support each other. So do you foster that sort of collaboration, saying, hey, let's have an interview together, let's do this? Is that something you're trying to sort of, I suppose, build in that sense of we are competing, but fundamentally we're on the same team and we're going to support each other and actually co-create as well? We
do a lot of that. So we do a lot of respond to.
Yeah.
And, LinkedIn has various ways to do that, reposted thoughts, comment, share, blah, 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 blah. And we do a lot of that. Yeah. We kind of have what we call maybe like a unicorn post.
That's nice.
And we say, you go with that, and then everyone else kind of responds to that. And I think we talked about, one of the questions earlier was, how things have gone wrong. And what I think is one reason where it's gone wrong in the past is having too many posts around the same topic. Not, as you were saying, like kind of repeated boilerplate, but maybe the same asset.
Yeah.
And what we've done now is we pull that back and says like 1 or 2 unicorns, everyone else piles in, and then you're cross-pollinating. Yeah,
that's a brilliant idea. So basically consolidating the creative, saying rather than doing 100 posts on this webinar, let's do 2 or 3 brilliant posts, and then everyone just comments and contributes on those 2 posts rather than everyone sharing a generic asset. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah, that's a really good idea.
And just touching on the point of comfort zones, and what I'm trying to talk to people about is, like I said, this idea of like brand TV and having these conversations. And we talked a lot about LinkedIn Live, but there's also a really other good feature, LinkedIn audio events, where you can actually just join online roundtables and you can just have discussions with your audience. And obviously LinkedIn Live's great, but obviously, and we've got the questions in the newsfeed, but we can't actually have that 2-way dialogue. But with LinkedIn audio events, you can actually have roundtables and talk to people, and that's why I'm really excited. And I do believe that LinkedIn one day will become its own metaverse where we'll all have avatars and we'll go in. And right now, if we were doing an event, there'll be hundreds of you in this room. And I think if you're watching LinkedIn, that's what I want to see is a LinkedIn
we'll
metaverse.
get under the reps.
Yeah, we want avatars, we want a metaverse. Still a lot of questions coming through about metrics down here. And I think, obviously we are in tight economic conditions and everyone is really keen about metrics and KPIs, and marketing teams are definitely looking at what activities they should be investing in. Budgets are being cut, and if you aren't activating a channel where there's firm ROI, then you've definitely got to go somewhere.
I think you spoke about how sales teams should view content marketing almost like cold calling.
Yeah.
So like the modern sales mix is going to be, okay, rather than spending 4 hours randomly picking up the phone, spend 4 hours creating content, spend 4 hours messaging people one-on-one. That's a really, I think, tangible KPI, saying we produce X amounts of bespoke content for this target audience. That's as good as me picking up the phone and trying to randomly call someone.
Yeah. Social selling is like a must for any salesperson. It's not like a add-on. There are still some people out there who've got their networks that they've built over years and they've not really had to adapt because they're getting deals just from their existing network. But for the modern sales rep, especially if you're coming in fresh, how are you going to build relationships? I prefer the digital medium a lot more because back in the day, sales was very much an old boys club. It's like who deals done on the golf club, and you couldn't get into these networks. But now through LinkedIn, you can kick down some doors and open up some networks in there. I think we've had some great questions in the live, and we're kind of coming to a close of today's live. But any final thoughts, James or Robin, on what brands should be thinking about in 2023? Any final tips for the audience out there?
And actually, by extension, what's the future? What's for you? Where do you want to see a program go? What's the 2-year plan? If you can share that.
Sensitive information.
There we go, sensitive information.
I think the starting point is our colleagues want to be on LinkedIn and they want to do it well. So we do that, and that we invest a lot in that. From that, then we see opportunities to pick out various groups, various initiatives where we think we can help the social selling program. And it's almost like to have an amazing social selling setup that if you came to me and you say, I want to do X for Y with this audience, then I can say, this is the tactic that you want. So I think for me, it's about refining that social selling and being a world leader in that.
Nice. And I think it's a nice way to sort of wrap up. Robin, thank you so much for coming in. For everyone else that wants to obviously connect with you, LinkedIn, best way. Join LinkedIn. And looking forward to seeing how the program develops. And for those of you, as I said, want to take part in our trial of our tool, it is very innovative, it's very new. I'm not sure, James, whether the link was in the chat. It was in the chat. You can click again. We'll put it towards the end. We'll have a chat, take you through the tool, and then you can try some stuff out. But no, I thank you everyone for joining. It's been a really, really fun, almost an hour. It went very, very quickly. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the day, and looking forward to seeing some of your amazing content from your programs.
Yeah, and make it fun.
Make it fun.
Program has to be fun.
Great. Thanks, everyone.